Rebecca Dawson, and just spending a few moments with you discussing what we're all experiencing, sensing, feeling, and living for the energetic frequencies and experiences on the planet this September 2018. So we've had another really interesting message come through from Serapis Bay, Saint Germain and Kuthumi, this time as a group energy, and the message very aptly titled Beginnings. So we know that July was a shattering, August was new beginnings and moving into multi-directional experience, not feeling like we're really progressing. So last month's message about non-linear progression, I'm sure a lot of us are experiencing that and still sensing a feeling of loss, confusion, not really knowing where we are as September begins. However, something is brewing. There is definitely a new essence of life that we're experiencing now in the ether. If you look outside, the light is different. People are beginning to feel differently, experience differently. Our senses are heightened as we move into September. So this really is a period that is about beginnings and creation. And for the human mind, that can be incredibly difficult to grasp because the human mind's always looking for that next sequence of events. We like to be able to see ahead so that we can plan and we can strategize and have an idea about what our direction is. The message for me personally this month was very, very helpful. I just brought it through this morning. Actually, my husband Daniel was with me and the dog as well. And it was very interesting for us, I think, to feel that it's okay to feel grief and loss about where you thought you were going in life. And that sense of despondency and failure that you can sometimes feel when you feel as if life hasn't quite progressed in the way that you'd like it to, or that perhaps there was a lot of energy that was put into a particular project or a direction that hasn't come to fruition. So September very much is about understanding that everything that our minds have wanted to hold on to is no longer available. That linear mapping that moves us into our future, it's very, very difficult to ascertain. And I've heard from a lot of people in the last few weeks that they look ahead into their lives and it feels as if there's just a great void ahead of them, a great expanse. For the way that we think and feel about our lives, it can be incredibly frightening, but it can also mean for many of us that we don't really have a sense of why we are here. So I thought it was very interesting, the opening comments of this month's message, who are we and what are we here for? I think that that's a question that a lot of us are asking ourselves at the moment as we seek to find purpose in our identities and our roles. And yet September is really about the discovery of what's unfolding, the discovery of possibilities that we didn't know anything about before. It's easy to judge ourselves and measure the caliber of who we are and a sense of success in terms of how well we can navigate pathways, how well can we seize an opportunity and make something of it. And again, that's a very much a mind's attempt to try to create sequence and see ahead, rather than looking at all of the possibilities that are becoming available in September and finding great joy in knowing that we have more choice and more options than humanity has experienced on the planet for hundreds of thousands of years. Because when you're not just playing out your karmic history anymore, all of a sudden there's multiple pathways, multiple things that we can choose to engage with. However, it is not a time to really set clear timelines, goals, strategies for moving in one particular direction. So a bit of a continuation from our theme in August there. One thing I really want to touch upon this month, and this is something that came up in a workshop we just delivered in Melbourne last week, and the same message came up in something that we delivered here in Perth a couple of weeks ago too. And that is, it's a very common thought amongst conscious humans that the more conscious you become, the more you should be able to move into neutrality with your emotions, or perhaps be less emotional in your responses and your everyday reactions to things. There was a beautiful message that came up from Kusumi actually in Melbourne last weekend that talked about how enlightenment, we can start to think about that in terms of embodiment. So in other words, the more conscious we become, the more embodied we become, the more anchored in the body we become. So it's not really about moving out and ascending out of physicality, it's actually about descending into physicality. And I know that Saint Germain and Serapis Bey have both said on multiple occasions that they don't want to be seen as ascending but as descending into the human experience. So if we can start to look at enlightenment as embodiment, we can also understand that the more conscious and more embodied we become, the more intensified our experiences are. So it's not about moving into neutrality, becoming more conscious. It's actually about having a more intense human experience. And of course, as an artist of creation in this reality, as humans are designed to be, we're going to have intensity of flavor and emotion and experience across the whole spectrum of possibility. So we don't just move from having certain types of experiences and moving into other types of experiences, just like we don't move from on a colour spectrum from darker colours to lighter colours. A true artist will use all of the colours available, and the more masterful that we become, the more that we'll be having experiences of grief, we'll be having experiences of joy, and the intensity between the experiences perhaps we think we should be moving away from and the experiences that we think we should be moving towards, we actually get the full range but more intensity of hue. So I like to think about it in terms of colour. And I know that some of my most beautiful friends and family in the last 6 weeks, who are incredibly conscious beings and really beautiful teachers around the planet, are experiencing the intensity across a whole range of emotions at this time. One particular one that's coming up for a lot of people is grief. And there's a lot of sadness, a lot of disappointment, a lot of fear and a lot of anger that comes out. Not only at other people or a sense that things have failed, but also for ourselves. And I think this reflects really beautifully in this September's message about beginnings and about letting go of who we think we need to be. Part of that grief that's coming up, of course, is the release of all of our history as we move from linearity into possibility, out of probability and into possibility. So if you're anything like me, you've been experiencing a big letting go, a grief for what you thought your life was going to be, the direction you thought you were going to move into. And for many of us, it can almost feel like I don't want to try anymore. I've given up. And it's important for you to know it's not about giving up on life, and it's not about giving up on yourself. It's about giving up in trying to persevere with something that's design was created eons ago. The giving up is actually a release. It's a release out of probability and a great relaxing into possibility. Bringing us back to the message for September about breathing deeply and exhaling into the expanse of what is possible. So they're my thoughts about September. Please know that I'm in the intensity right there with you. There's lots of emotional disruption. There's lots of confusion. There's lots of frustration. There's lots of impatience. But again, if we can understand that we're just sinking into the possibility, just beginning with what's available, then perhaps we can all take comfort in the knowing that it's a good time to be observing. Big love to you all. I look forward to speaking with you again soon.